Welcome, everyone. Quick scan of the audience. Who here is from security? We got one, two. All right, is everyone hand working? How about development? All right, quality, management, other. All right, interesting. So my name is Peter Chestna. I have been in the InfoSec or the application security space for 12 years now. I've been a developer since I graduated from college, so more than 25 years a developer. I have done all of the methodologies. I've been through waterfall, transitioning to Agile, transitioning to DevOps. I've built microservices, I've built monoliths. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I work today for CA Veracode. We have a booth outside there, so this is the only part of the vendory part. We help you secure the applications you build, the applications you buy, and the applications that you download through open source and stick on your networks. So we can help you with all of those problems. So let's talk about the problems. Who in the room, and it should be about half the hands go up, were part of the Equifax breach, had their PII outed to the world? How about Target? Who was part of the Target breach? So these are instances in the global sense of the lack of focus that we put on application security. And we're going to talk a lot about the differences between what people do for InfoSec and what they do for AppSec, and they are two very, very different worlds. Let's talk about California specifically. The San Francisco Muni. Everyone heard of that one? So that particular breach, if you weren't aware, affected San Francisco. They had to basically give away the transportation system for I think it was for an entire weekend, because they were breached through a third-party open source component. They put malware on and held the system hostage, said, pay us or we're just going to keep it. So the only choice they had at that time, because they felt like they could recover from it, and they eventually did, was to give it away. These are things that can be prevented. There's a hospital, the Hollywood Presbyterian. For more than a week, they had to turn away patients. All of the records were electronic. They got malware in their systems. They couldn't do CT scans. They were sending people from the emergency room to other hospitals to go service them. These are the kind of things that we are going to be vulnerable to as a society if we don't get our act straight around this stuff. We are making the same silly mistakes that we were making more than 10 years ago. OWASP Top 10. Who is not familiar with the OWASP Top 10? Okay, lots of people. All right, so Open Web Application Security Project. This is an open source project that works on and thinks about web applications, most of the things that we interact with, the things on our phones, the things on our computers, Amazon, Netflix, those are all web applications. They publish something called the Top 10, and that's the top 10 vulnerabilities inside of web applications today. And that list, if you look back historically, has not changed greatly since it was first published. One example of this is something called SQL injection. Now, SQL injection is a vulnerability where you go into a field and you type in some very special characters, and then you can give all the information from the database to whoever that user is. Or you can delete data, you can encrypt data, you can do a lot of really bad stuff from the web application if you're not protecting against it. Here's the other problem. So developers in the house. Applications that are being shipped today are 80 to 95% open source. That's freely available components. They help you get things done fast. The way I talk about this is it's like going to Home Depot and buying lumber. Everyone could buy the same components. I can give you the same shopping list and tell you, here's the components for your house. And when you build the houses, you drive down the street, all the houses look different, yet it's made from the same stuff. This is the way applications are built today. They're built from these components. So we stitch them together, and they all look different. There's, like I said, about 5 to 10% of that application is first-party code. Your developer's sitting down, stitching these things together, and putting their own little magical sauce into them. But at its core is this open source. And this is a major problem. This is what caused the Equifax breach. This is what caused the Muni breach. It's open source. Because this information is public, by the way. It's out there for everybody. Here's the component, here's the problem with it. Here's an exploit to go get after it. These are publicly announced so that way we can go protect ourselves. But we tend to ignore these or not even understand that we have them because we don't keep track of the components that we ship inside of our applications. So I want to ask, but I already know the answer. There's only probably two of us, since two of us are from Veracode, that could say, how many people in here can give me the bill of materials for any application that they ship today, that they have on their perimeter? I can. And if you can't, then this is something you should be thinking about today, and something you should be thinking about tonight, and something you should come and talk to us about at our booth, because this open source problem is a huge problem, and the attackers know as much as you do about it, actually more. So let's talk about the stuff that we put on the internet today. And it starts with our personal computers. It now branches out into internet-connected toasters, internet-connected refrigerators, the IP cameras that we sit on our fridge to monitor the inside of our house so we can take a look. Hey, is the dog doing something they shouldn't be doing? Is my house being broken into? These things are built the same way. They're built from open source components off the shelf. Does anyone remember when like half the internet wasn't available? There's something called the DNS. So the way that, so this was a DDoS, a distributed denial of service attack. The way the internet was taken down, that part of it was they DDoSed DNS. This is a place where you type in Microsoft.com and it tells the browser where the actual place to go is because that textual name gets translated. I remember when you had to know these IP addresses, gets translated into an internet address where the computer actually knows to go send traffic to make these requests. They used your internet cameras, which by the way have hard-coded passwords on them that you probably don't change when you install them. So the attackers went in and says, oh, look at all these things. Free compute, thank you very much. Then they take that, they install their own software on it, and then they attack the internet. So we are responsible for our own demise. Okay, so I said before we're going to talk about the difference between InfoSec and AppSec. So information security versus application security. And this is what information security looks like today. We have endpoint protection, we have intrusion detection, we have intrusion protection, we have firewalls, web application firewalls. We put all kinds of money. Most of the budget goes to making this look really pretty, and defense in depth is what we call it. So we've spent a ton of money on this, and we do a really good job. So what are the attackers going to do? If you have a solid steel door on your house, but you leave your window open, where are they going to go? They're going to go to the open window. So this is AppSec. Anyone familiar with the Maginot Line? Okay, a couple people. So after World War I, the French said, you know what? Enough of these Germans coming in here and taking us over. We're going to build a wall. We're going to build a wall to make sure the Germans stay out. And here's the wall. Notice it stops at Luxembourg. And they got some defenses, but they're really minimal. This is what we do with our application security. We say, hey, I'm just going to protect the important applications. So let's talk about Target for a second. Who thinks that a billing application for the vendor that works on my HVAC is important? You do, you do, and you do. Well, if I phish that vendor and get their passwords to log into that system, and then I can spread laterally inside of the network, get all the way to the point of sale machines inside of every single store, that was my open window. Now do we think it's important? So when companies talk about, or government or whoever talks about protecting the most important things, it has to be everything, because they will find the open window and they will use it. So next, let's talk about when we test. When we talk about testing, who here does application testing? Nobody? A little bit? All right, so what you're typically going to hear is something called pen testing, penetration testing. As a person sitting in front of a computer and inferring how your application runs. They sit there, they try something like, that's interesting, let me try this. And eventually they will break in. So here's the difference. If you are a target, and I don't mean target in the store sense, but a target of someone trying to get into your systems, they're going to get in. I don't care how protected you are. Most of us are targets of opportunity. They just happen to find us. We test at the very end. So this jet engine here, this is the metaphor. I take all the parts, and there are tens of thousands of dollars worth of parts, and I put hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of parts. I put tens of thousands of hours of labor into building this jet engine. Stick it all together, stick it into a test stand, I fire it up, and it blows up. Now, why does it blow up? So we have to have an investigation, had an incident. And we look at it and say, this fan blade over here was cracked. It never should have been put in the engine in the first place. So you hear a term out in the industry now about shift left. This means shifting quality checks earlier and earlier in the process when they're cheaper and easier to find. Do you think it's easier to change that fan blade and not put it in the first place, or to have the whole engine put together, and maybe I could detect it before I fired it up? To have to tear the whole engine apart to go find this fan blade, to bring it out and put it back in, and then put the whole thing back together? Which one do you think you'd rather do? It's about changing the way we think about where we do the testing and how we test. This is built out of what's called the Toyota production system, which is the reason that Toyota and the Japanese car makers ate our lunch in the 70s and 80s. Yes, sir? Yes, it's true. In the 70s, in GM, and the big three, in fact, they put the cars together on the assembly line. It was all about getting it done fast, which is how we build applications today. If the wrong door shows up for the car, I'm going to find a way to stick the door on the car. And then at the end, when they test it and say, well, this is wrong, they park it out in a big parking lot full of stuff that they need to now disassemble to reassemble into cars that they can sell, wasting tons of time and tons of money. At Toyota, they said, hey, can we test this? Can we find this earlier? If there's a problem, we're going to stop. You actually go faster by going slower, which is a really weird thing. But if you test for it now, when you see it and it's right there in front of you and it's exposed, you can quickly make the change. And you will go faster. So when we do the testing in applications, it's almost always at the end. When we come into prospects and we start with our customers, that's what they're doing. They're doing pen testing at the end when the whole thing's built. And if we're talking about waterfall, that's a year-long project or more. So if I made a mistake on day one and it's now day 356, I have to unknit the sweater all the way back to that point sometimes to go re-knit the sweater. How incredibly wasteful. There are better ways. All right, now let's talk about California specifically. So I was looking at how California thinks about application security and breaches specifically. There are two ways. The first one is about notification. There are laws in California saying if someone's data is exposed, you have to tell them. Now the second way is they want to punish the people that installed the malware. What's missing from this? What is missing in this equation? Punishment and notification. So let's talk about disease for a second. Cholera is everywhere. It's probably in this room right now. But no one's getting sick from cholera in this room. Because we have laws and regulations that talk about how we sanitize things, and it's kept at a bare minimum. But when disasters happen, and the sanitation system goes to crap, literally, you have a cholera outbreak. It was already there. It's not like it magically appeared when the disaster hit. It was able to blossom in the environment in which it was in at that point. So they'll beat it back and they'll clean everything up, and then cholera will go away again and it'll go back in the background. This is what application security is like today. Hackers are able to get into our applications because we've given them the environment in which to flourish. We don't pay attention to it. We just ship whatever we ship, and too bad for everybody. Or how about a toaster? Every day we do things that are inherently dangerous. Toasters take electricity and turn it into heat by putting it through a wire, and they're put in direct contact with something that's flammable. If you toast long enough, you will have fire. We don't have fires. People toast all the time. How? It's impossible. It must be incredibly lucky. We have regulations in place. We have regulators and safety systems that are built into every single toaster by law so that we don't burn our friggin' houses down every day. Prevention. Monitor the system, understand the system. When it goes wonky, stop it. When my toaster stops working properly, it'll just stop toasting. It won't burn my house down. So, I will assert to you that the missing piece in application security today is prevention. Let's stop with this punishment crap. How's that working for us? Breaches are getting bigger. They're more frequent. You know, the fact that law assumes that California can even get their hands on the person that's doing it. Internet's global as far as I know. So if I'm half a world away, what the hell's California going to do to punish me for installing malware on your systems? What's the point? The people that are responsible for releasing the software are right here. We buy it, we install it, and we forget about it. And we assume that they did the right things. All right, so here is the strategy. And it starts with people. Security is like soil and green. It's people. Your problem is people. And it starts with relationships. So if you are in development and you don't know anyone in your security organization, or if you're in security and you don't know anyone in your development organization, this is the first problem. It's us versus them. Developers keep doing it wrong. I'm running pen testing and it always shows stuff broken. And developers are like, security just keeps slowing us down. I'm all done, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to ship the product and put it out in the field, and they come in and say, no, you can't because here's 100 pages that says you did it wrong. This is not a relationship. At my first startup, when we used to get into a room and get really heated, there was a small team of engineers really passionate about what we were doing. When we get into arguments, our VP would say, all right, everybody stop, take out a business card. So everyone would do that, and he'd say, hey, look, up here on the top left, what does it say? Oh, it says the same thing. We're all working for this. The enemies are outside, not in here. We need to fix the way we talk to each other and the way we work with each other. The fact is, security is responsible for securing the applications, but they can't do it by themselves. So we need to have some kind of goal alignment where we're actually tugging in the same direction. If you think about DevOps, this is usually marriage of Dev and Ops is the way people think about it. So I have developers which are paid to ship code very quickly. I have operations people that are made and paid to keep production smooth as glass. Now, how many ponds can you step into without causing a ripple? If you change it, it will cause a commotion. So change is against what they're goaled to be, right? So I don't want change. I need to change fast. These are tugging in opposite directions. We do the same thing with application security. We can't continue to do that. So we need to talk to each other. We need to get goal alignment at the higher levels of the government, at the higher levels of our companies. The people that you buy software from, the companies that you buy software from, what is their application security? Can they attest to it? Can they show you that they've actually done it? So once we have this, we need this. Now, I have the good fortune of getting to speak around the world about this topic. And I was at a B-Sides conference, which is a security conference in Connecticut. And one of the leaders of OAuth, so that Open Web Application Security Project, got up in front of the room and he said, "We're going to hold the developers accountable." Does that sound friendly to you? Does that sound like relationship building to you? A little aggressive? Now, fortunately, I was able to speak after him. I had a slot after him. So I looked at him and said, "Hey, wrong idea. Interesting, but wrong idea. What you want and what you need," so again, I'm a developer by trade. What you want and what you need is the developers to say, "I am responsible. If it's broken, it's on me. If it breaks in production, it's on me. If it's not secure, it's on me. I wrote the code, I'll fix the code." And yet, we don't have that baked into our culture. Developers are expected to write stuff that functions. How does that happen? Because when they're hired, they know that's an expectation of yours. That when they finish building it, it actually does the thing you paid them to build it for. Now, if you include in that the fact that it needs to be secure, and you change your culture around that to say, it's your job, you have to fix it, they're going to start thinking differently about security. Because I can't say I'm done anymore. When we went through our agile transformations from waterfall to agile, in waterfall, it's throw things over the wall. So development's done, they throw it to quality. When quality's done, they throw it to security. When security's done, they throw it to operations. It's always broken on the other side, but I did my job. I was told to write the application. I didn't have to worry about testing it, so it was always broken. In Agile, we kind of glued those two teams together and say, guess what, guys? You can't leave the room and say, I'm done, until it actually tests and works. That's part of done. So in Agile, which again is something that you usually typically find in DevOps as well, there's a term called the definition of done. Think of it as a checklist. Here's all the stuff I need to go through, all the steps I need to do to say, I'm actually finished, pencils down, I can leave the room now. So we need to get security on that list. In the Agile transformation, quality got on that list. Now we need to do the same thing with security. All right, so now we've got a great culture. We have some agreement that we're going to work together and that I'm accountable for the mistakes that I make. Next thing we have to do is measure. If it's important, you should be measuring it. So is anyone running a development shop in here? Have developers working for them? All right. So when we're building our software, we need to test it frequently. Think of this like blood pressure. If I go to the doctor once a year, and every year he says, you have high blood pressure, what does that actually mean? It means that every year on the day that I go visit the doctor, I happen to have high blood pressure. Does that mean I have high blood pressure? I don't know. I don't have any data. If I measure that every day, maybe I'm nervous about going to the doctor, so I'm naturally stressed out, so my blood pressure is higher when I go to the doctor. Maybe I always fight with my wife on the way out the door, or I work in a very stressful environment. I had an argument, so I'm pissed off and stressed out, so my blood pressure's high. We need to start changing where we're measuring, making it more frequent. If you measured your blood pressure once a month, I know a lot more about my blood pressure than I did. Now, I'll probably see some maybe little bumps in the road, but it should look pretty smooth. If I measure it every week or every day, I got a lot of data. Now I can see I'm doing better, I'm doing worse, it's going in the right direction. So whatever I'm doing on that day or in that week or just before that is actually impacting my blood pressure. So maybe I can start to figure out what's causing it. It's the same thing with application security. If we don't understand what they struggle with, then how can we help them? So this new world is all about building those relationships and helping the developers do their job. So now we have measurements, now I know what they struggle with. Now we move into the world of training. I will tell you, as a developer of more than 25 years, I was not trained in application security. I learned it on the job at Veracode. No developer graduates with a degree in secure coding. And in fact, not all of you developers graduate with developer degrees. There's a large swath of people that come from other engineering disciplines like electrical engineering. There are people that pick it up on their own. Learn how to code, and now I'm a developer. So even college isn't the right place in some places for this training. But train them we must. If you think about, they're gonna make one mistake every 10 minutes. Let's just pick a number here. And it's not because they're purposely doing it wrong, it's because they don't know a better way. I just do it the way I learned, which is insecure, so I just keep doing that. A lot of the things in that OWASP top 10 are just a choice. I could code it this way, or I could code it that way. And if I code it this way, it's secure, and if I code it the way I've always been taught, it's insecure. So what if we changed it from 1 in every 10 minutes to 1 in every 100 minutes by just showing them, better way, do it like this. Say, okay, I can change that, I can do that. And you know what those things are because we were measuring. So let's give them training that is actually impactful. Don't send them to a course on secure coding. How about we just talk to them about the things that they struggle with? The way I talk about this is I'll fill this room full of pizzas, I'll open the door, and it'll fill with developers. Developers love free food, by the way. I'll talk to them for an hour, just about that one thing, the most important thing to me today. I want to talk to them about it. That doesn't put us off the hook, though. You have to understand how the sausage is made. You have to understand how development works. You have to understand how software is built and released. Understand the things that they struggle with, because they have struggles as well. Has anyone in here read the Phoenix Project? Nobody. Okay. Put it on your reading list. If you care at all and want to understand how development is done and how it's being done in this world called DevOps, this is the book. And it's an easy read. It's a story. You can read it in a weekend for sure. So now we've trained them. Next thing is we're going to do some testing. We're going to find some stuff. We need to help them fix what they find. Again, they're untrained. They don't know. They will get better at this over time, but we have to invest some effort. This is shifting left for me, is helping them prevent the mistakes in the first place. Give them the training, help them fix what they find, they will get better, and then they're going to stop writing them in the first place, and you're going to have a very low incidence rate of new security flaws. Next thing, again, these breaches are largely just accidental finds. Equifax, I don't think anyone was trying to hack Equifax. The way these breaches happen for these open source vulnerabilities, I take over your IP camera, I spray the internet with this exploit. And whoever I find, I go look at the data and say, who cares, Joe's Barbershop. It's like Equifax, holy crap, that's awesome. Let's go get them. You have to know what you're shipping with, the bill of materials, the list of ingredients. One thing that developers do not do a good job of, myself included, at least used to, is what we do is we integrate these components and then we forget about them. We abandon them. We don't think about them again. It works. I'm all set now. Now that component goes through new development. If there's a security violation that's found in it, a weakness, it's patched, but it's patched on the newest version. So the farther I drift away from what's current, the harder it is for me to get current. So we need to have good discipline around how far we're out of sync we're allowed to get with our open source components. It's like renovating your house over and over again. What we do with open source is it's like cleaning the same 5% of your house all the time and leaving the rest 95% on its own. It's not a place you're going to want to live. But this is what we do with applications. All right, next one. If you think about how many developers there are and how many teams they're on and how many meetings they have, how many opportunities there are to talk about security, there are thousands of them. And there are probably singulars of people that are responsible for application security. You can't cover all those meetings. You can't be in the room. So what do you do? This is a concept that, while we didn't come up with it, it's very common in the industry now if you go to InfoSec conferences, this idea of security champions. So if this is my development team, if I have 2 development teams here, and I'm the security guy, I'm going to get 2 people from this side and 2 people from this side. I'm going to train them on the kind of things that I worry about. They're going to get additional training, which makes them more valuable, by the way. And as these teams go do their meetings, there's always someone around that's ready to talk about security, that's thinking what I'm thinking. And if it's something that they're unsure of, that's when they come to me. 80-20 problem. I've solved 80% of the problem by giving these people the right level of training so they can help the rest of their team. I can't train everybody, not at this depth, but I can give a few people what they need. So if I take this 2 teams and I make that 100 teams, which is not uncommon, over what might be an application perimeter of maybe 3 or 4 or 8,000 applications, which is also not uncommon. How can one person do that? You need these security champions to help you. It's not hard to do, but it requires discipline, it requires training, it requires an investment, it requires your company or the state or the government or whatever to say, security is important and I'm willing to invest in it. Because this stuff doesn't happen for free, but the investment pays off over time. Okay, so this is a new day for all of you. You've now been enlightened. We have to change the way, we have to change the way that we talk to each other. We have to change our expectations of each other. And we have to change the way that we do business. The only way to make an impact on the problem that we have today is by changing our approach. Let's not push against each other. Let's start pulling in the same direction. Right? So let's talk about goal alignment. Let's talk about those relationships. Let's talk about measuring and coming in as a partner. If you are in the security space, you should be going to development. How can I help you? Not, you're doing it wrong, you idiot. Developers are not stupid. We pay them lots of money to do their jobs. They're fairly clever. They just don't know. So what I'll assert to you is if you change your approach, you will change the outcome. Thank you. Happy to take any questions. Yes, sir.
Talk about needing more testing. What does that mean for information security?
So what does more testing mean for information security professionals? That was a question? All right, so again, the way that people typically test, and by the way, this is the most expensive and worst way. Not that it's not important, so let me clarify. Pen testing is important, but for a lot of the things that we can find and fix, I can find it for pennies on the dollar. If I want to pay pen testers, what I want them to do is I want to pay them to earn the money that we're spending on them. Go find the hard stuff that the tools can't find. So more testing means I bake this into my IDE, I bake this into my build server, I bake this into my bug tracking system. I test all the time as they develop the code. So I get frequent information about are they getting better, are they getting worse? The training that I had last week, is it paying off or not? Did I do it wrong? Do I have to go reapproach them with something different? You don't know any of those answers unless you measure. So it means baking it deeper in and farther left, closer to the point where they're actually writing their code. Does that answer the question? Okay. Who's next? Yes, sir.
You alluded to some, there's a third-party software and you can ask them to see if they're testing needs. But what if the organization wants software anyway and it doesn't meet your security requirements?
Then security is not important. So here's the thing. Show me your budget, I'll show you your priorities. If you're not spending money on application security, then application security is important to you. If you're buying from a vendor and you're saying, you know what, I don't care, because here's what happens. Let's take the consumer. We are all responsible for the fact that the stuff that we buy, the IoT, the IP cameras that we put in our house are insecure because we buy on cost, not on features. No one asks for security, so why the hell would they do it? If I can build that camera for $2 less than my competitor by not putting security in, then that's what I'm going to do. So same thing for your vendors. If you don't hold your vendors accountable, they're not going to do it. If you don't ask for it as part of the remit. If you don't say, hey, I expect this to be secure, here's my policy, you need to prove that you conform. If you don't do it, they won't. They don't do it out of the goodness of their hearts. They do it because it makes them money. I will lose money if I can't sell to you, thus I will put application security on the list of things that I need to do. It's really that simple. So if us consumers, so if you look at Target's stock price, it was going like this, and then it went through the floor when the breach was announced, but then guess what? It went right back up and started ticking again. We have short memories, and really we're showing that we really don't give a crap. So why would they do it? Yes, sir.
I agree with what you just said.
Yes.
Sometimes I think it can be a failure of management, whether it's executive management or, let's say, it's the CISO or the CIO.
Yep.
It's an incredibly poor job to sell that case.
Then it's not important.
The executive, the CEO, your best friend, they want to triple your budget.
Mm-hmm.
You come in there with no story, no reasons why. Oh, please, can I have 10 cents more?
Yep.
You haven't made a case.
Yeah, and you have to make that case, especially those kind of people, based on dollars and cents, to show them that here's the risk. So if you're in the public sector, point at Equifax, CIO, CISO, CEO, all lost their jobs. They weren't thinking about it, they didn't care. Now, if you're a small company or a small government agency, maybe you don't have the money. This is a risk-based decision, right? If I want to at least understand the risk that I'm taking and say, you know what, I don't have the money to do that, we're going to take the risk. Maybe I do this much, but it's better than nothing. But I'm going in with my eyes open. I'm not going in with my eyes closed. So yes, if you can't make the case, again, if I was going to walk into a place and become the head of application security, first two people I want to talk to before I accepted the job would be the CIO and the CISO. What kind of relationship do you guys have? Is there a mandate? Am I walking in here, so you think about the pyramid of management, right? I want to talk up here because I expect behavior down here. I can't go affect the masses. I can't go into a company of 20,000 people with 3,000 developers and expect to convince them all that application security is important. It's not going to work. I'm going to be wasting my time. If you can't get agreement and alignment up top, then you're going to get what you get. It's going to be a struggle the whole way. Everything gets easier once you've had that conversation and make that part of the baked-in goals. By the way, you report on it. Those measurements are things that you're going to report on. I'm going to report on it to the CEO. Here's our risk right now. Half of our applications I know nothing about. Does that disturb you? If it doesn't, then okay. It's a business decision. It's okay to make business decisions, and small companies are built based on risk. I'm going to take that risk. I'm going to defer that work because I just want to live. So until you get there, I mean, yes, you need to make the case, but you need to make it in the terms of dollars and cents. Yes, sir.
You have a lot of experience doing that management budget.
Mm-hmm.
For every, say, $100 that you spend towards developing,
Yep.
and you decide to put in security, how much would you throw at it costs extra to consider security?
It costs extra in the beginning. So here's the thing. If I make a mistake, let's say I make one mistake every week that I sit down, and developers do it far more than that. As I said, the tools that you can buy for not a lot of money, pennies on the dollar of what it costs to actually pay that employee to do their job. If I start measuring and seeing those problems, then I can help them to avoid them in the first place. So if it comes out of here secure, the cost is in creating the problem, then tracking it, then fixing it, and then retesting it. All of that work needs to happen once I've made the problem, if application security is important to us at all, right? If I could train that out, then all that time goes back to development. Now I don't make that mistake. And I tell you, a lot of them are simple. I made it or I didn't. I wrote it correctly or I didn't write it correctly. We can get into the deeper levels and the logic errors and those kind of things, and that's a total different ballgame. We're not even in that plane right now. We can't play at that level. We need to get the simple stuff fixed first. So yes, it's an investment and it's a decision. How much money can you afford to spend? Or can you afford not to spend? How important is it? Once you train the developers, they're trained. Now, you have that problem of churn, headcount changes, people come in, people get laid off. It's a constant problem, but you either decide that I want them to write less buggy code or you don't. That's the choice. Anybody else? All right. Yes, sir. Phoenix Project. Gene Kim. There's actually an audio series that just came out this week with Gene Kim and John Willis, who wrote the DevOps Handbook. beyond the Phoenix project. So they go into Deming, they go into Gold Rat, and the theory of constraints. They go into the Toyota production system. They talk about all of that in this audio series. So if you want to skip the book and go right to that, you could do that. It's excellent. This is the resource. Anyone else? All right, thank you very much for your time.